Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Michael sank into the dark leather sofa, a half-empty glass of wine resting on the side table. The quiet hum of the TV channels filled the silence of the living room, while he pressed the remote control buttons without really looking at the screen. It was just another evening like so many others, and he felt comfortable in that sameness. The sofa, the silence, the muffled sounds from the kitchen where Lauren was finishing something, everything seemed routine, familiar, predictable. Lauren, his wife, had always been the liveliest person in the house. If Michael was made of calm, almost stillness, she was restless, full of ideas and energy. Even so, lately he had noticed that she spent more time on her phone, speaking softly or lost in thought, though he'd never paid much attention to it. After all, they didn't fight, they didn't yell, they had no problems, or at least that's what Michael believed. The marriage was stable, safe, like an old house that, despite marks on the floor and stains on the walls, didn't seem in danger of collapsing. Then Lauren came into the living room, holding a glass of wine in her left hand and her cell phone tightly in her right, as if they were an extension of herself. Her eyes had a different shine, some mix of excitement and nervousness, something Michael hadn't seen in years. She wore a light smile, but there was something there, between the lines of her behavior, that he couldn't decipher. "Can I sit?" she asked playfully, as if she needed permission. Michael smiled, turning his gaze away from the TV and patting the space next to him. It was the first time in a long while that she seemed to want his attention. Lauren settled onto the sofa, swinging her legs to the side and looking straight at him. Michael felt a tightening in his chest, as if something were about to happen. "I've been thinking about something different for the two of us, something freeing," Lauren began, her voice filled with enthusiasm, as if she'd been secretly nurturing the idea. Michael raised his eyebrows, curious. He couldn't recall the last time Lauren had surprised him. Their marriage was made up of quiet dinners, predictable weekends, and talks about bills and deadlines. This was new. And new, for Michael, was almost unsettling. "Freeing how?" he asked, trying to match her light tone but feeling a discomfort creeping up his spine. She took a sip of her wine and smiled. "Have you ever thought about going to a nude beach?" Michael blinked, thinking he must have misheard. A nude beach? He straightened up on the sofa, setting the remote aside, while the silence between them seemed to grow. Lauren watched him with expectant eyes, as if he could read what she really meant. "Are you serious?" "Yes." Lauren laughed, the sound escaping like a light breeze, but still full of nervous energy. "It's a liberating experience, Michael. Imagine what it would be like to break out of this routine, to live something totally new. Just you and me, no judgments, no restraints." Michael looked at his wife, trying to absorb her words. Lauren had always liked different things, but this? He never would have expected it. The idea made him uncomfortable, but at the same time, he realized something inside him also longed for change. He couldn't tell if it was the proposal itself that intrigued him or the sparkle in Lauren's eyes, a sparkle he hadn't seen since their early years of marriage. "I don't know, Lauren. Isn't that a little out of character for us?" She shook her head, her blonde hair falling over her shoulders. "Maybe that's exactly why we need to do something like this. Step outside the ordinary, try something we never would. Life is so short, Michael. Don't you feel like we're just standing still?" Lauren's words struck something deep inside him. Michael turned his gaze to the window, where the moonlight traced soft shadows on the floor. He thought about how their lives had become so predictable. When had they stopped being a couple full of dreams and plans and turned into two companions sharing a space? "What if it doesn't work?" he murmured, almost to himself. Lauren placed her hand on his, her touch warm and steady. "Then at least we tried. The important thing is that we'll be doing it together." Michael sighed, feeling torn. Part of him wanted to refuse, to say it was absurd, that he'd never feel comfortable at a nude beach. But another part, a small part, almost smothered, was tired of always being the same. Maybe Lauren was right. Maybe they needed this. "All right," he finally said, his tone a bit uncertain. "Let's give it a try." Lauren's smile was wide and genuine, lighting up her face like morning sun. Michael's heart beat faster, not sure if it was out of nervousness or anticipation. As she got up to fetch more wine, Michael looked at the now turned-off TV and realized he didn't know what to expect. He didn't know how to feel about the decision he'd just made, but one thing was sure, nothing would be the same as before. The sound of the car's engine seemed louder than usual, or maybe it was just Michael's nerves turning the environment suffocating. He kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, glancing at Lauren, who smiled with the window down, the wind messing up her hair. She seemed at peace, like someone about to fulfill a simple dream, while he felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The nude beach was unknown territory for Michael, a place he never even imagined setting foot in. Still, here he was, driving silently toward the unexpected, all in the hopes of reconnecting with Lauren. When they finally reached the dirt parking lot, Michael couldn't help but notice the tranquility of the place. The beach stretched out ahead, protected by dunes and a wooden walkway leading to the ocean. There were no lines, no shouting, no loud music, just the sound of waves breaking in the distance and a soft, salty breeze. "Ready for this?" Lauren asked, hopping out of the car with enthusiasm that almost cruelly contrasted with Michael's discomfort. He forced a smile, grabbing the towel he had brought like an invisible shield. "Ready?" "Not even close." His feet sank into the soft sand as they followed the walkway, and the horizon opened before them like a serene painting, blue water, cloudless sky, and groups of people scattered about, strolling or chatting as if nothing were unusual. Without clothes. Michael paused for a moment, his eyes trying to adjust to the scene. It was exactly what he expected, but seeing it in person was something else. People acted naturally, in a way he couldn't understand. There were no furtive glances or discomfort, just free, relaxed bodies engaged in ordinary activities like reading a book or playing paddleball. "This isn't so strange, see?" Lauren said, laughing softly as she spread a towel on the sand, choosing a spot close to the water. She slipped off the light dress she wore without any hesitation, revealing a confidence that left Michael stunned. She seemed like someone else, someone he didn't know as well as he'd thought. Michael, on the other hand, sat down beside her without moving, still wearing his t-shirt and shorts. The sun warmed his skin, but not more than the embarrassment boiling inside. He felt Lauren's eyes on him, knew she wanted him to relax, but it seemed impossible. How could anyone feel so comfortable around strangers? To him, it was like being on stage, exposed, even without doing anything. "You don't have to force yourself," Lauren whispered, sensing her husband's inner struggle. "Just enjoy the view." Michael snorted, trying to avoid looking at the people around them. Staring at the ocean was his only solution, and for a few moments, it worked. The waves came and went with a hypnotic regularity. Maybe Lauren was right, maybe there was something freeing in the simplicity of that scene. He was starting to breathe more calmly when a familiar voice interrupted his brief moment of peace. "Lauren? Lauren Turner?" Michael froze, feeling tension flood back into his body like an electric shock. He turned his head slowly and saw a tall man approaching, tanned and smiling. Ryan. He looked like a character from a movie, carefree, confident, and, of course, without clothes, which only made the situation more surreal for Michael. Lauren jumped up, her eyes shining with surprise and delight. "Ryan? My God, it's been so long." Her voice held the same warmth and familiarity one reserves for old friends. Michael watched them hug, a greeting too enthusiastic for his liking. Ryan was an old college friend. Michael knew that much because Lauren had mentioned him a few times over the years. But seeing them together now, laughing and quickly catching up on each other's lives, made Michael feel more out of place than ever. "And you, who are you?" Ryan finally asked, turning to Michael with a friendly smile and extending his hand. Michael shook the man's hand almost automatically, feeling a slight pang of awkwardness as he realized he was the only one who seemed uncomfortable. Even this stranger seemed more at ease than he did. "Michael," he replied, trying to sound natural. "I'm her husband." "Oh, of course. Lauren's mentioned you a few times. Nice to meet you." Ryan smiled again, then turned his attention back to Lauren as if Michael weren't there. Michael watched the scene with growing unease, feeling invisible. While Lauren chatted with Ryan about their college days, laughing about stories he didn't know, Michael felt something painful rise inside him, the realization that this version of Lauren he was seeing now was someone he didn't know. She was confident, free, comfortable in her own skin, and worse, happy alongside another man. No matter how hard he tried to hide it, the encounter left a bitter taste in his mouth. Michael looked at the ocean again, but the calm he'd felt moments before was gone. In its place was a silent, unsettling question: what else didn't he know about the woman he had shared his life with for so many years? That night, the silence seemed deeper than usual. Michael stared at the bedroom ceiling, eyes wide open, while Lauren slept soundly beside him, breathing steadily and calmly. He turned over, restless, feeling a wave of emotions he couldn't name. It was a discomfort clinging to his skin, an itch he couldn't reach. The image of Lauren and Ryan at the beach kept replaying in his mind, the hug, the laughter, the ease with which she seemed to exist in that world beside him. A world where Michael didn't seem to fit. Ridiculous, he muttered to himself, turning over in bed again. Lauren stirred slightly but didn't wake. Michael had always been a rational man, someone who avoided conflict and kept insecurities to himself. But tonight, the weight of silence was unbearable. He got up quietly, feeling the cold floor under his feet. The bedside clock read 2:27 a.m. The whole house slept, but his mind worked tirelessly. In the kitchen, he turned on a dim light and poured himself a glass of water, hoping it would help clear his head. Then he saw Lauren's cell phone, left there on the counter. Michael paused mid-sip, his heart giving an involuntary leap in his chest. The device almost seemed to glow under the faint light, as if daring him to pick it up. He took a deep breath, placing his glass down slowly, and looked at the phone again. Lauren had always been private, never leaving her phone just anywhere, which made this moment even stranger. Did he really want to know what was on it? The doubt burned in his mind. Maybe he was just imagining things. Maybe the meeting with Ryan was nothing more than an innocent reunion. But then, like an irresistible current, curiosity, or was it desperation, got the best of him. Michael reached out, picked up the phone, and unlocked the screen. At first, he saw a flood of ordinary notifications, social media, emails, trivial messages. For a moment, he felt foolish. He was about to put the phone back when something caught his eye, a conversation with the name Ryan at the top of the messages. Michael hesitated, heart pounding in his chest so hard he could almost hear it. His thumb hovered over the icon, and he opened the conversation. It felt as if the air had disappeared from the kitchen. The messages were recent, from a few days ago. Some were simple, seemingly harmless at first glance: "It was great seeing you again, Lauren." Others, however, had a more intimate, more dangerous tone. "That beach just reminded me who we really are. Thank you for that. I missed you all these years. It felt like a part of me was lost. You've always been special to me, and you always will be." Michael gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Each word was like a silent stab, and he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. Lauren's replies weren't as compromising, but they also weren't firm enough to push Ryan away. She didn't outright encourage him, but she didn't set boundaries either. How could she? He whispered to himself, voice rough with indignation. He scanned the messages again, as if rereading them might change their meaning, but they stayed the same. The trust he'd placed in Lauren, trust built over years of marriage, began to crumble right there in that solitary, late-night kitchen. Staring at the screen, Michael felt a pain deeper than jealousy. It was something more profound, more cruel, the feeling of being irrelevant to the person he loved most. He looked around, at the living room dimly lit by the kitchen's faint glow, and the emptiness seemed to mirror what he felt inside. He didn't know what to think, what to do, or how to face Lauren the next morning. Each second was torture, each message rang in his head like a scream. Why didn't Lauren cut off contact? What did this mean? He didn't know if something physical had happened or if it was just nostalgic memories of a youth she wanted to relive. In any case, the emotional betrayal hurt as much as a knife in the chest. Michael put the phone back on the counter, his hands still shaking. He sat down at the dining table, holding his head in his hands, feeling everything collapse around him. Finally, he looked into the darkness of the hallway leading to their bedroom and whispered to himself, "I don't know her anymore." At that moment, Michael realized that the discomfort he'd felt on the beach wasn't just a whim of jealousy. It was a sign. And now, faced with this silent, cruel truth, he knew there was no turning back. The trust that once held their marriage together was broken, maybe beyond repair. The sun was already high when Lauren woke up that morning, her hair messy and her face relaxed, as if she had slept soundly. For Michael, however, the night had been endless. He was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of cold coffee he couldn't bring himself to drink. His mind felt like a battlefield where feelings of anger, pain, and betrayal collided without pause. Each word he'd read in those messages echoed in the heavy silence of the house. When Lauren entered the kitchen, wearing a silk robe and a distracted smile, Michael's world seemed to split in two. On one hand, there was the woman he'd shared years of his life with, the same one who smiled as she made coffee and took care of small details around the house. On the other, there was the Lauren he didn't know, the one who exchanged intimate messages with Ryan, who left a gap between what she showed and what she felt. "Good morning," she said, picking up the coffee pot with ease, not noticing the tension in the air. Michael didn't answer right away. He just watched her, his eyes full of questions he couldn't yet ask. The scene seemed so ordinary, so mundane, that it hurt even more. How could someone act so naturally after something like this? He didn't know if it was innocence, lack of concern, or worse, confidence that he would never find out. "Lauren." His voice came out softer than he wanted, but firm enough to make her stop what she was doing and look at him. Lauren studied her husband, noticing for the first time that something was wrong. This wasn't the usual Michael. "What's wrong?" she asked, furrowing her brows slightly. Michael took a deep breath, his hands gripping the coffee cup almost to the breaking point. He felt anger rising in his chest, but the pain was greater. When he finally looked up at her, his expression was something Lauren hadn't seen in years, a mix of frustration and vulnerability. "Who are you, Lauren?" The question came out dry, cutting, yet full of hurt. Lauren's eyes went wide, surprised. "What are you talking about? What kind of question is that?" Michael pulled her cell phone from the table and placed it in front of her, the screen still showing Ryan's last message. The air seemed to freeze between them. For a few seconds, no one said a word. Lauren looked at the phone and then at Michael, and he saw her expression change. First shock. Then a look like she was searching for the right words. "You went through my phone." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but Michael caught the defensive note. "That's all you have to say?" Michael shot back, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor, making Lauren flinch. "I saw the messages, Lauren. I saw everything. The conversations with Ryan, the comments, the memories. What's going on between you two?" Lauren blinked several times, as if processing his words. Then she took a deep breath, letting the heavy silence settle between them. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than Michael expected. "Nothing is happening, Michael. Absolutely nothing. Nothing? He let out a bitter laugh, crossing his arms. And you think this, he pointed to the phone, looks like nothing? Messages about missing you, about how special you are? What's that? A joke? Lauren ran a hand over her face, exhausted. No. It's not a joke. It's just nostalgia, Michael. Ryan was an important part of my life, someone who knew me at a time when I still remembered who I was. Michael felt his breath catch for a second. Those words, said so honestly, hit him like a punch in the gut. Then what am I? He asked, voice shaky. A stranger? Someone who never really knew you? Lauren hesitated, biting her lower lip. She seemed to be looking for something in Michael, some confirmation, but all she found was a look of pain. That's not it. You're my husband, Michael. I love you, but sometimes I feel lost. I feel like I'm not myself anymore. Like a part of me got left behind, and I don't know how to bring it back. Her words echoed through the kitchen, and Michael felt paralyzed. Part of him wanted to yell, to ask why she never said anything before. Another part wanted to hold her, say they would find a way through this together. But he couldn't move. He couldn't speak. So you decided to look for that part in someone else? He spoke almost in a whisper, filled with hurt. Lauren didn't answer. She just lowered her gaze, and that was enough. Michael understood that, even if she wouldn't admit it, the gap between them wasn't new. It had been growing over the years, silently, until it was too big to ignore. Finally, Michael stepped back from the table, feeling an indescribable emptiness. He grabbed his car keys, leaving her cell phone where it was, and headed for the door. Lauren didn't try to stop him. She stayed there, watching him leave, disappearing down a street that suddenly seemed longer than ever. At that moment, Michael knew nothing would be the same. The trust he carried was broken, and no matter how hard he tried, he didn't know if he could mend it. The only certainty he had was that he needed space. A place to think. A place to breathe. And maybe, just maybe, a place to find himself again. The separation between Michael and Lauren wasn't immediate, but the emotional distance between them became impossible to ignore. Michael realized they had reached a breaking point. He didn't want to make rash decisions, but he knew something had to change, either they would rebuild together, or go their separate ways. In the following days, Michael kept his distance, seeking space to understand his own feelings. Lauren, for her part, tried to reach out, sending messages and leaving notes around the house, but he wasn't ready to face it all yet. The silence between them grew, like an abyss that seemed hard to bridge. After weeks of reflection, Michael decided to move out temporarily. He didn't do it as an act of anger, but as an honest choice. Both needed to find themselves as individuals before deciding the future of their marriage. When Lauren heard his decision, she didn't argue. For the first time, she also admitted that she was lost, and that maybe it would be best for both of them to take a break. Their farewell was quiet, without shouting or blame. Just two people who realized that love sometimes needs room to breathe or reinvent itself. Michael packed a few bags, left the house key on the counter, and left. Whether the separation would be final or just a pause was still uncertain. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and the real test of love lies in the ability to rebuild after it's been shattered. The only sure thing was that Michael and Lauren were no longer the same people. Time would tell if they would meet again, as partners, as friends, or as two souls who learned that before loving someone else, you need to learn to love yourself. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.